Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
awesome. So, thanks everyone for joining. First of all, glad you're here. Chainflip is a cross-chain DEX. What does that mean? Essentially, you can think of it like a version of Uniswap that does cross-chain stuff. So, Bitcoin to Ethereum swaps, Polkadot swaps, and as of very recently, also Arbitrum swaps, which has been something we've been working on for a little while. It's the first chain that we've added since we launched the protocol earlier this year. But yeah, we've been building this since 2020 as when we first got started. It's a fairly involved project. It's not just a smart contract where you can swap tokens on a single chain. We've actually got, I think we're still the only protocol using this threshold signature scheme called Frost, which is a very efficient Schnorr-based scheme that allows us to essentially create a giant multisig using our own validator network. And then that giant multisig has what we call vaults sitting on all the different blockchains, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, Arbitrum, Polkadot, and there's more coming as well, like Solana. So what that allows us to do is then create virtual liquidity pools from these assets held on their own native blockchains. So you can send, Bitcoin directly from even Binance, for example, to a unique deposit address that the network generates. And then we automatically swap that through our own AMM system called the JIT AMM. I'll probably get into that a bit later, but with very, very competitive pricing, directly to whatever Ethereum wallet address you specify or Polkadot or so on and so on. So it's a very efficient way to natively swap these major assets cross-chain with very low slippage at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And yeah, what inspired you guys to go into the cross chain route? Um, Obviously, right? You DeFi Summer 2020. So
Mm.
was there like an inspiration from that, or yeah,
Yeah.
what led you guys to go in that route?
It was funny, like when we started researching the project, like sort of putting together the early version of the white paper was May of 2020. So the DeFi summer hadn't really kicked off yet. They came, 3 months later or so. I think what inspired me personally is that I was a user of Shapeshift back in like 2015 before the whole KYC thing came around. I don't know how many people in the audience were around at that time, but that was probably the best service there was to swap Bitcoin to Ethereum and so on. And had a really cool user experience where you could just go to this website, click a few buttons, and then you would get a deposit address, and then you sent a certain amount of whatever asset you wanted to that address, and then magically, like an hour later, whatever you wanted to buy appeared in your wallet on another blockchain. And it was a really, really cool service that meant you didn't have to, create these exchange accounts and custody your funds there and do KYC and all that stuff that, can really slow down the process. So, I mean, for me personally, anyway, that was, a really strong inspiration at the time as well. Thorchain was starting up, which I think was probably our closest equivalent out there in the space. And they hadn't finished building it, weren't even close to finishing building it at that time. But, the concepts are out there, and yeah, they're sort of the main inspirations for what we ended up releasing earlier this year. So quite a long time coming, I'd say.
Yeah, no, it's crazy that like how that was like created back in 2015, and
Yeah,
now we're almost 10 years. We're almost 10 years from that moment, right? And obviously the whole entire DeFi space has evolved since then. So with Chainflip, like what are you guys looking to accomplish, or what are you guys trying to like bring into the ecosystem that's more innovative? Like what are some really cool innovative ideas that you guys trying to bring into the ecosystem?
sure thing. Well, I mean, playing off the shapeshift idea, as you said, it's been 10 years now, and it's taken that long for someone, or nearly 10 years, but it's taken that long for, anyone to really bring out something that can offer the same use, which is kind of nuts. I mean, that back in 2020 when we first started working on it, we were expecting there would be some sort of decentralized solution to the swapping side of things, and even at that time, Uniswap wasn't really that popular. So, it really wasn't clear at the very beginning that, anyone was really making significant progress towards solving the problem of decentralized exchanges, right? We've been relying since the very beginning in this industry on centralized parties, which do play an important role. There's no denying that. As far as market execution speed, until fairly recently, there hasn't really been another option. But by the same token, the whole premise of what got me into blockchain in the first place was, not having to rely on an intermediary in order to execute transactions. And the fact that it's taken this long for something to show up or for alternatives to exist is pretty surprising. But I think once we started working on the problem, we realized why that might be the case, just because of the, very varied nature of the architectures of all the different blockchains involved, and there just literally wasn't a cryptographic solution to the problem in 2015. Like, Chainflip could not have been built any sooner, really, because the cryptography didn't exist. The Frost paper itself came out, I think, in 2019, and the second version in 2020. So, it's pretty cutting edge stuff at the end of the day. And I guess what we're really trying to do with this, what the vision is with Chainflip, and I guess the broader DEX space in general, is to help crypto remain very resilient against the failures of intermediaries. That's been a huge problem, as we've known from Mt. Gox and FTX, and I could name half a dozen other sort of major experiences that people have had with dealing with a centralized counterparty in order to do whatever transactions they want to do. And yeah, I guess, the whole idea is to present alternatives so that we can hopefully have a situation like what happened with Uniswap. For a lot of tokens out there now, for the last 4 years or so anyway, there is now a legitimate option to launch without having to rely solely on centralized exchanges and all the gatekeeping that surrounds that as well. With Uniswap, any token is suddenly tradable on chain, which is great. And then that has, of course, also extended out to all the L2s like Arbitrum, and now Solana's also getting the same sort of infrastructure available. But it was pretty clear that, for the major assets and for the cross-chain components of those transactions, there just really hasn't been a good alternative. Like, to do Bitcoin swaps, for example, is you can't do it with smart contracts, right? You need this multi-chain architecture and a range of other things to facilitate that. So I guess what we're really trying to do in summary is be that component for the different chain architectures to be able to provide a liquidity bridge between these different assets on these different blockchains that have very different architectures. And obviously that's a huge market. Bitcoin still takes the lion's share of the market capitalization and most of the volume as well when you look at, non-stablecoin assets across the market. So, pretty big opportunity, as well as very important for the space in my view.
Yeah, no, those are really good takes. And I think something interesting as well, that cross-chain apps focus on, is like ensuring that when you're going from one chain to another, right, it's fast, right? Because you want it to be convenient for users to bridge over from one chain to another. But also security as well is important, right? And I know you guys are doing something with Boost, the new Boost feature that's on testnet.
Yeah, that's right. Speed is a big component of this, right? I think, coming back to Uniswap briefly, I think that's what really excited people early on, because it's like, well, now it's not only fast to list the token and create a liquidity pool and all that kind of stuff, which is great from a bootstrapping perspective, but also just the transaction itself is so fast. Like, you don't have to deposit funds anywhere. You don't have to screw around with these exchange interfaces and the KYC and all that kind of stuff, just to move a small amount of money. So if you want to interact with a DApp or something like that, it's essential that from a user experience perspective that can be done really quickly. So, being able to facilitate these transactions quickly is also a major reason why we developed this feature called Boost, as you mentioned. You know how when you go on Binance or whatever and you deposit an asset and you have to wait for a certain number of block confirmations before they'll credit your account with the deposit? Essentially, what we're building here is a way for that part of the process to be skipped. Because it's a cross-chain protocol, we've got the validators, they're always looking at the other chains. So if I make a Bitcoin deposit, for example, and I want to swap that to Ethereum, I still have to wait for the network to confirm the deposit before that can be credited and then automatically swapped over into whatever asset was specified. So Boost is a really cool feature because it allows that confirmation process to be skipped. Essentially, people can put up funds into it's kind of a liquidity provider position, but it's more like lending, right? And if you then do a swap and you say, yep, boost me, essentially you pay a small fee to borrow assets someone has already deposited to the system for the duration of the confirmation time. Effectively, what that means is I can swap my Bitcoin to Arbitrum or anything else in like under 10 minutes. You still have to wait for one Bitcoin block. But in the case of something like Ethereum, it goes down to seconds. So we can really, really speed up that entire process from start to finish. And it's fire and forget as well. So once you send the funds, you can expect to receive the assets that you've just bought, sometimes in under 30 seconds, depending on the different routes that we're looking at here, which when you think about what that process looks like when you operate through a centralized exchange, is significantly faster overall. And yeah, like you said, that's just come out on testnet. It was a part of the 1.4 release we did last week, along with including Arbitrum support. So I'm hoping that people enjoy that feature, and also there'll be an opportunity for retail participants as well to make deposits into this Boost system and earn fees on those confirmations as well. So if you've got some Bitcoin lying around that you don't know what to do with, this might be something worth looking at there as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, and congrats on that milestone. I mean, how's the community reaction been so far?
To Boost or to
Yeah,
Arbitrum
to Boost.
Well, it's hard to say. It's on the test net right now, so it's all fake tokens and stuff. But I think people are generally pretty excited. I think where it's really going to start counting, though, is for our integration partners, because I think if you look at a lot of the aggregators and stuff out there, particularly the cross-chain ones, where they're comparing different routes across bridges and across services, time is also a factor that's important as well. If something's going to take 2 hours, you might not really care if you're going to save $2 or $3 on the transaction for slightly better pricing, because by the time it actually goes through, prices have moved. Or you've lost interest in whatever you were trying to do and you've totally forgotten about it or whatever. So speed, I think, is maybe an underrated quality of any transaction process, be that a swap or otherwise. So I am hoping that when we get it out on mainnet, which should be pretty soon, it's yet another feature that allows us to compete for those swaps out there in the world of aggregators and wallets. So yeah, the community reaction's been good. But I think it's still too early to say, how successful it's really going to be. And I think it's probably one of those things that's also going to pay dividends over time as well,
Yeah, for sure. Soon we'll know. But yeah, I think this is a good time to shift and talk about the architecture behind Chainflip, because obviously there's bridges out there. There's other cross-chain swaps. So a question that a community member may have is, how do you guys differ from other bridges?
It's a good question. I mean, first of all, we're not really a bridge, right? That was never the goal. We're not trying to move USD around. There's plenty of services for that. Particularly when you have a centralized issuer like Circle, you're already putting a fair bit of trust in them. And when you have CCTP on the back end and all that kind of stuff, you just don't really need it. What we're really aiming at here is facilitating swaps between the different native assets. And I think that's a key word there, native. We're not wrapping Bitcoin and then bridging it on some other service and then swapping it on two different dexes, because the gas cost of that, particularly on something like Ethereum mainnet, can be prohibitively expensive. So really, we're a bridge and a DEX and cross-chain messaging protocol and a lot of other stuff all rolled into one system. So we gain a lot of efficiency there. And like I was saying before, the architecture that enables us to do that is we have our own validator network. It's fully decentralized. Anyone can join it. There's actually staking opportunities there for any flip holders out there as well through Thunderhead. Check them out. Essentially, that validator network gives us a lot of flexibility, right? Because if we can write the code for the validators to agree on what to do, then we can basically do anything. So unlike your typical bridge where, I was looking on Solana the other day and the amount of wrap tokens there are is pretty insane. Just to go from one asset to another and then have to route through 3 different pools to get there is, something that just shouldn't happen in an ideal world. And it's an optimization that we're able to offer. Having these giant multi-sigs effectively gives us full flexibility to support any tokens, to create any arbitrary pools, and to process transactions on blockchains with completely different architectures. So, the back end itself is comprised of the validator network. They're running a version of the substrate chain that we've built called the state chain. That's effectively where all the accounting happens. That's where all the pools are created. That's where all the swaps are processed. That's where they agree on what deposits have or have not occurred, what to broadcast or where to broadcast it to. All of that information is stored on the state chain, which is super cool. And then on top of that, they have what we call the Chainflip engine, which is sort of a sidecar process where, they're looking at Arbitrum, they're looking at Bitcoin, they're witnessing different transactions. They're also doing all the multi-sig stuff inside that as well. So yeah, you could all of the stuff that a centralized exchange normally has to do in terms of, processing the transactions and doing the swaps, is what our validator network has to do. But it also has to be fully decentralized, fully traceable on the blockchain and everything else. So there's been a lot of weird edge cases and stuff that we've had to think about. If something goes wrong, no one can just manually go in there and change the accounting so that it all makes sense again, or manually process a transaction for a user. So it has to be very, very fault tolerant and has to be able to recover. If we've sent a transaction that doesn't have enough gas, the network needs to be able to, re-sign and rebroadcast and do all of this stuff all fully automatically. That's why it's taken such a long time to build. But we're really happy with how robust it's been so far. We've had very few cases where things have gone wrong. And I think with 6 months in the wild now, we can say pretty confidently that, the underlying technology itself is super solid and we're pretty happy with it. Does that answer the question, or is there something more specific you wanted to know about?
That was perfect. No, that was perfect. I can't imagine how complex that is. And I wanted to follow up with, in terms of going into the decentralization route, was there any challenges you guys ran into?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been fully decentralized from day one, and that's what's made it very difficult. I mean, I think looking back on the last 4 years or so of the journey that we've been on, one of the sort of big things that we were kind of stuck with for a while was that the threshold signing scheme itself was more difficult to wrangle than we had initially realized. If you think about it, if you just try and get 100 random computers on the internet to perfectly communicate reliably every time over a very short period of time to perform a key generation ceremony or a signing ceremony, this is a giant multi-sig we're talking about here, with a encryption library that's never been really deployed in the wild before. That was actually kind of difficult. We had real problems scaling up the network. As soon as we started getting above, 30, 40 validators on the network, we'd get a lot of failures and a lot of retries, and sometimes it just wouldn't work at all. It ended up being that the communication library we were using, libp2p, was just not set up to do this, but it was super, super low level code. So it was really hard to figure out why these different connections were dropping and all this kind of stuff. So we ended up just having to completely re-architect the networking infrastructure to be able to facilitate those sorts of transactions. So there's now like two different peer-to-peer communication systems operating at the same time. There's all sorts of DDoS attack vectors and all this other stuff that has to be considered as well. So that was one of the big challenges with getting this to scale to the level we wanted. There isn't another network out there that has as many participants in a live multi-sig network. And not only that, but across like 5 or 6 different vaults at a time as well, as Chainflip. So as far as decentralized custody solutions go, I mean, we don't really talk about this too much because it doesn't really impact the end user experience, but we are proud that it is, to my knowledge, the largest decentralized custody network in existence.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. And I know you guys have another product called the JIT AMM, and was curious like how does that play into the role of Chainflip's ecosystem or architecture?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, when you deposit your Bitcoins and you want to swap them to some Ethereums, how does that actually, like, what is the swapping part of that? Like, are we doing stuff on Uniswap on the back end or something like that? The answer is no. We've actually built a completely new AMM architecture, which we call the JIT AMM. JIT standing for just in time. And what it is a Uniswap v3. You can think of it as a system that allows you to place concentrated liquidity and range orders and a normal liquidity pool. But then on top of that, we also allow LPs to place limit orders in the same liquidity pool as well. Fill only. So basically what that means is as an LP, I can either place a range order like I would in Uniswap, or I can just have some, let's say, USDC sitting around. And when I see Bitcoin coming in to be swapped into USD, then what I can do is I can essentially bid on that Bitcoin and I compete with the other market makers using limit orders to fill that quote as aggressively as I can. Because if I can do that, then I will earn the fees on the swap. So every time there's a swap that happens on Chainflip, and there's quite a lot of swaps happening now, the LPs are essentially competing for that trade flow using these limit orders, which is great because it means that using only a pretty small amount of liquidity, like this is a big problem for DEXs, right? How do you bootstrap enough liquidity for the product itself to be competitive with the centralized exchanges? And in our case, the answer is, well, the LPs just use the centralized exchange liquidity and essentially do a sort of pre-arbitrage, if you like. So when they're quoting on your swaps, they're looking at every market out there and essentially trying to figure out what is the best possible price I can give. Yeah, there's so many ways to describe it. It's like OTC desks competing with each other for your business every time you do a swap. It's the same kind of thing. And the JIT AMM is really an essential component of the Chainflip architecture because without it, it just wouldn't be efficient enough to really survive. Pricing is a very important topic, especially when you're talking about these major assets. If you're talking about long tail assets, random meme coins or whatever, no one's really expecting or doesn't really care about, an extra 0.1% of tokens on the other end. But when you're dealing with something as big as Bitcoin, people obviously do care about pricing a lot. And so having this JIT AMM infrastructure underneath to allow for this very, very efficient form of quoting is essential in being able to compete in the marketplace. So that's what it is. That's how it works. And it's just yet another component in the stack that makes Chainflip pretty unique in the marketplace.
Nice, nice. And I know you guys recently integrated with Arbitrum. So yeah, well, what are the goals you guys want to achieve with this integration with Arbitrum? Is there something like in particular you guys are really excited about to do within the Arbitrum DeFi ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I think for Arbitrum, the main reason that we chose it is because it is the largest L2 in the space by far. It's got the most liquidity, the most activity. And that's really exciting, but that's not the only reason, right? It matters because Arbitrum has become increasingly so a sort of settlement layer for EVM chains in general. If I want to bridge USDC or do something like that, Arbitrum's a good place to start. There's a lot of support for it. It's pretty universal. It's connected to a lot of other cross-chain protocols as well. A lot of bridges support it. So, Chainflip can't support everything, right? There's right now only 4 blockchains supported by the network, which is not much. They're big blockchains, but that by itself isn't that impressive. But if we can link that up with, something like Squid Router, for example, then suddenly the possibilities are a lot greater. Because if I was trying to bridge, if I used Bitcoin to buy USDC on Ethereum and then tried to bridge that USDC over to some other network that Chainflip doesn't support using something like Axelar or Layer Zero or whatever, the cost would be very high. So I'm probably not going to choose that route. But with Arbitrum support, it means that we're now much, much more connected to the EVM ecosystem as a whole, where a lot of the activity is now taking place, not on the Ethereum mainnet. And by working with other protocols and other aggregators, we can string together these multi-protocol hops that allow for some pretty cool swaps to take place, where in a single click, in a single transaction, users can swap from basically any L2 to Bitcoin and vice versa, and we will form a component in that chain. So that was really the main idea for working with Arbitrum. But of course, I think it's also exciting for the Arbitrum ecosystem as a whole, because I think it's fair to say that Chainflip would be the first sort of really competitive place where Bitcoin now becomes something that can be more closely integrated with Arbitrum in a very useful way to users. So going in and out of Bitcoin and then automatically interacting with any sort of smart contract on Arbitrum using cross-chain messaging protocol that's a part of Chainflip as well means that there's now some really, really great onboarding flows or offboarding flows that dApp builders can integrate into their products as well. And this is something that we're really excited about. And if anyone on the call here wants to learn more about that, you are more than welcome to reach out to us or check out our docs. We are really, really excited about the possibilities there, and think that, for NFT marketplaces and things like that, like ordinals and all that kind of stuff, there's now the possibility of doing something a lot more integrated with the wider ecosystem using these different chain architectures, and Chainflip is a part of that story. So I don't know if it's going to be something that, has an immediate impact for users right now. But I think the fact that the support is now there is a real possibility that there'll be some brand new flows that we can bring to the ecosystem that I think will, open up a whole range of possibilities.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, the home of DeFi is one step away for the Bitcoin maxis.
Yeah, if they come, yeah.
Yeah, so if they want to convert ETH maxi, they can just use Flip, Chainflip.
Exactly. They can just flip it.
It's like a portal. That's funny. Yeah. And yeah, talking a bit about the future of Chainflip right now. Obviously, you guys announced the Arbitrum integration. So yeah, what are some things you guys are excited about for the rest of the year for you guys?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, with the Arbitrum integration, we're really excited to be able to pitch to people like GMX or Camelot or Trader Joe or things like that to, bring these new trade flows to their products and hopefully to a whole range of new users as well. So on the ecosystem development side, that's going to be a big part of it. Something else that's coming up sooner than expected, I would say, is Solana support. So again, like for the Arbitrum ecosystem, hopefully that means that we can offer a much better sort of two-way interactions between the ecosystems, especially when swaps are involved. There are bridges out there, but go use them. Go use them and tell me if you enjoy it. A hot tip, you won't. So, hopefully that's something that we can improve there as well through the Solana support, and I'm excited about that. But there's a whole range of new features as well that we're bringing out that I think will be pretty essential in getting us to a place where we're regularly competing towards the top of the list for the DEX market in general. We really want to be doing $100 million days by the end of the year, and we've got some ideas on how to get there. Arbitrum's the first step along that road. We've also got Fill or Kill coming out. So that's effectively, decentralized limit orders. Effectively, you can essentially guarantee a better price. And, there's automatic retries and all this other stuff involved, which is great. Really helping protect users from a pricing perspective, but also create some new order types that we think will be really useful. DCA swaps. This is a feature that Jupyter in the Solana ecosystem introduced fairly recently. It essentially allows you to drip feed a swap. So instead of trying to do it all at once, you can do it a little bit at a time and have that automatically be done for you, so that you're not eating as much price impact as you go through a swap. And that's really cool, because it means if you want to swap, $2 million, you're not sitting there processing it in like $20,000 chunks for, a couple of hours or whatever. It's just done for you automatically in the background with very little price impact. So from a pricing perspective, we think that is a really huge step. It means that you can now actually use decentralized swapping protocols and expect to be able to move the same kind of money that people are doing on the centralized exchanges. Again, it's a part of that vision and mission to really, take a lot of the control that the centralized exchanges have over the ecosystem out of that environment and into something that is more trusted, is more secure, doesn't have that same counterparty risk, but still offers a product that is compelling and competitive and also faster. So I think for us, that's something that we're really excited about as well. Boost is coming online soon as well. And then a range of other things. We're constantly looking at how we can work with new wallets and new aggregators to improve the offerings that they have, and to, obviously we're interested in getting as much volume as possible. So if anyone's out there listening to this and thinking that it might make sense for you guys to talk to us, you're most welcome to. I think that with the combination of those things for the rest of the year, we've just crossed the halfway mark today. I think that we're in good stead to be able to become one of the larger dexes in the space, and that's really what we're here for. So, yeah.
Bullish on flip punk.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited for you guys. And for those that, are interested to learn more about what you guys are building, or even get involved in the community, where can they go?
Well, Chainflip.io is the website. We'll also be at ETHCC in Brussels. I'm landing there on Sunday. I'm playing in a little crypto squash tournament, apparently, which I'm quite excited for. But we're also running a happy hour. So if you would like to come and speak with us on Monday, you can do that. But of course, Chainflip.io has got all of the docs. It's got the swapping app itself. I highly recommend checking that out if you haven't seen it already. You don't have to connect your wallet or anything. You can just check it out, see what pricing is available, and get a feel for the user experience. That's swap.chainflip.io. And then, of course, on the website, you'll also find our Discord, which is always fun. And you'll find us all there. You can reach out to us and we'd be happy to chat. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
Nice. Yeah, I sadly won't be there, so I'll be FOMOing on CT.
It's Brussels, mate. It's not that exciting, unfortunately. But
I mean,
Paris
Arbitrum's throwing a big event. They have a stacked lineup for Arbitrum Day. So there's gonna be tons of speakers, and a few side events, I believe. But yeah.
I'm sure the conference week itself will be great. It's just, I haven't been to Brussels personally, but one of my best mates did live there for a year, and he did not have the best things to say. But so I'm really sorry if anyone's from Brussels here, but I'm just speaking the truth. It's not Paris. We've been to ETHCC every year for the last couple of years, and that's always fun. I'm curious to see what it's like this time, but yeah, the conference will be good, no doubt. And there are a lot of people going.
It might be a tiny bit better with the degens around, roaming the streets.
Yeah, I mean it's so small that we might actually all see each other this time, which would be great, rather than riding Lime scooters around for hours and hours and hours trying to get to all the different side events. So who knows? It might work out well.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, appreciate you, Simon, for joining us today. For the community too, for tuning in with us. And yeah, we wish you the best and hope everybody here has an awesome evening, morning, wherever you are across the world. But yeah, see you guys on the next one.
Thanks so much for hosting, man. Really, thank you for being here, or for me being here.